Nearly all of the food in grocery stores and at restaurants are just saturated in seed oils. The average American eats 5 to 10 tablespoons of seed oil every single day. They are unknowingly feeding poison to themselves and the people that they care about. The sweet corn that you buy at a local grocery store is not the problem. If you get steamed edamame at your local sushi place, that's not the problem. The sunflower seeds are not the problem.
Now the battle we're facing, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, cancer. I mean, my goodness, young people having these issues. And it's escalating tremendously. This is not natural. This was not in the 1800s.
When you Google, are seed oils bad? The first 5 articles are going to be the American Heart Association. All of these big associations saying, no, they're great for you. They've been proven to reduce heart disease. No, they haven't. Hi, welcome back to the Sustainable Farm Podcast. My name is Jaylee, and I am here with Jerry. Now, in the past episodes, we have discussed a number of topics regarding our health, the health of the soil, the health of the animals and their products, the laws and regulations surrounding these things, as well as health concerns surrounding food safety, food quality, and means of food production. In that same spirit, the topic that we're going to discuss today really dives into the nitty-gritty of grocery store and restaurant quality food, and that is seed oils. Now, I think that you would agree with me that in this podcast, we really want to make people aware of things that they are otherwise unaware of.
Absolutely.
And seed oils is at the forefront of that because you've got, let's just paint a picture of just your average mother who's going to the grocery store and filling her cart with things that may be marketed towards health. She may think she's making good choices for her family, but nearly all of the food in grocery stores and at restaurants are just saturated in seed oils. And so they are unknowingly feeding poison to themselves and the people that they care about. And as you'll see, I'm sure, as we continue with this episode, I'm very passionate about the topic of seed oils for this very reason. I've always been health conscious, and it took me 28 years of my life to even hear the words seed oils and to know what they were at all. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. And we're going to start by just listing them for you. As we were doing our research for this, there are many different oils. So I'm not going to say that this is an exhaustive list, but these are really the big ones that you want to look out for. And those are corn oil, soybean oil, canola oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, cottonseed oil, grapeseed and rapeseed oil, and anything with just the term vegetable oil. Vegetable oil is just it could be any of those, or it could be a mixture of any of those. So anything that you see with that, you want to avoid. And we'll talk extensively about that in this episode. Oils that are not considered seed oils: olive oil, avocado oil, coconut oil, walnut oil, macadamia nut oil. And then oils that I've personally heard mixed information on, so I'm not 100% how I feel about them, is peanut oil, sesame oil, palm oil, and sometimes sunflower oil. We're not going to touch too extensively on that today, but a lot of those can be cold pressed, so they're a little less processed, but they're still not great. So for me personally, I have them kind of in like a gray area, but I still try to avoid them if I can. Now, I'm in a seed oil group on Facebook, and I like just kind of seeing other people talk about it, and I comment on things sometimes and just try to help spread information. And one thing that I see a lot of when I'm interacting with people in that group is that a lot of people are confused about where these oils come from. So like, let's take sunflower oil, for example. I've seen people say, well, should I not eat sunflower seeds then? And really what we're going to talk about is the processing of these oils and how it's not necessarily where they come from, because even soybean oil, for example, is one of the worst. But young, tender soybeans, if you steam them and salt them, that's edamame. And edamame is one of my favorite snacks. And I am crazy about avoiding seed oils, and I'll eat edamame. Okay. So it's not that you're necessarily avoiding those, right?
So as a farmer, there's a lot of corn and soybeans grown in America.
Yes.
The two major crops, if you go all across the Midwest, it's either corn or soybeans, and then
and they're monocropped.
They're monocropped. And the reason for that is we have a farm bill that subsidizes those crops. Now, what consumers don't know is that's not edible food.
Right.
35% of that corn is used to make ethanol.
What's the difference? There's Is that called field corn? Is that what that is?
It is field corn.
And it's not you can't just eat it on the cob.
It's not sweet corn.
Right.
It's either used for ethanol production or it's fed to livestock.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so, or what we're talking about is the major use of it. Because it is subsidized by the Farm Bill,
yeah.
So the federal government keeps it cheap by paying the farmer to keep it cheap.
Right.
This is the source of the major food companies.
Yes.
The big players get this cheap ingredient, and it's what they do with it. Well, you know all the processes, and you're going to tell them.
A little bit, yeah.
But they re-engineer this seed, and they create new foodstuffs that were never there.
Right. Yes.
And
completely bioengineered.
Then they put flavor enhancers and salt. Yes. And high fructose corn syrup is it's in ketchup, it's everywhere. Not
to mention the extraction solvents and the bleaches, the deodorizers.
So what we're talking is not a God-made plant that is bad.
Right.
We're talking about a grain that is taken as a cheap ingredient to create through a lot of chemical processes a new food-like substance. Right. Exactly. It's not real food.
Exactly. And it's grown differently. So if you are confused about that, if the sweet corn that you buy at your local grocery store is not the problem.
Right.
The soybeans if you get steamed edamame at your local sushi place, that's not the problem. The sunflower seeds are not the problem. It is this totally other product that is grown. It's handled differently all the way back to when the seed is developed in the lab. It's handled differently from beginning to end.
And it's in the industrial process that the damage is done.
Absolutely, which is what we're going to talk about. Okay, so now there's going to be some sharing of information that may come across as dry, but I want you to understand that when you really understand what's going on with this, it motivates you to want to make a change. If you don't understand what is happening on the inside when you consume these, there is no desire to avoid it in the grocery store or avoid it at a restaurant. And so as we go through this information, just remember that this is what's happening to you on the inside when you consume these things, and let that motivate you to want to make a change. So we're going to start by talking about saturated fats versus unsaturated fats, which this goes back to high school. I mean, it's really very basic science, but saturated fats are often what are referred to as animal fats: butter, ghee, lard, tallow, red meat, dairy, all of those things that we're told we're supposed to avoid. Unsaturated fats are the oils: canola, soybean, corn oil, all of those we listed. Now, neither one of those are totally evil, and I want to make sure that we get that across. We're not trying to say completely avoid unsaturated fats, because unsaturated fats are also found in things like salmon and tuna, nuts like almonds and cashews. It's still natural, and your body still needs it in some quantities. The problem is saturated fats have been painted evil and have been erroneously accused of causing the massive heart disease problem in our country. This was done to encourage the public to drop their healthy, natural forms of fat that they've been eating for centuries. Again, the red meat and the dairy, all of the things that we've been discussing in this podcast, in favor of the new industrialized oils that were better controlled and therefore more profitable, which we'll talk about. It took decades to get people to make the switch, and it was really the fear-mongering propaganda surrounding the heart disease that helped them make the switch. All right, so what's the difference between saturated fat and unsaturated fat? So here we go with the science, just a little bit of science. Saturated fats have a clue in their name. They are saturated with hydrogen atoms. This makes them solid at room temperature, able to withstand higher temperatures, and all around more stable, which means less likely to oxidize or go rancid. There's really not a lot going on here. They're pretty simple fats. Unsaturated fats have one or more double bonds, which means an area on the fatty acid chain where hydrogen atoms are missing. This makes them liquid at room temperature, like your vegetable oils, less stable and more susceptible to oxidation or going rancid. If you hear oxidation, that word means that they are going rancid. When there is more than one double bond, the unsaturated fat is called polyunsaturated. The prefix poly just means many, which means there are many places on the atom where there are missing atoms. And it's named after the first bond on the chain. For example, if the first double bond on the chain is on the third length of the chain, it's an omega-3 fatty acid. If it's on the sixth chain, it's an omega-6 fatty acid. The more double bonds, the more susceptible the fat is to oxidation via exposure to light, to air, and to heat. Seed oils are particularly rich in omega-6 fatty acid, known as linoleic acid, a fat that humans didn't eat in high quantities until the last 100 years or so when all of this started being developed. Your body requires both saturated fats and unsaturated fats to function. However, newer sources of fat like seed oils can skew the natural balance of fats in the body and may contribute to unprecedented levels of health issues, from skyrocketing obesity levels to heart disease and more, which we'll talk about a little more. So that brings us to our next point, which are free radicals.
The omega-3s and the omega-6s.
Yeah.
I'm not a chemist.
Me either.
But I am a reader.
Mm-hmm.
And what I've learned, really balance is important in life. And the omega-3s have much more stability internally in our body.
Yeah.
And so if you're taking real food and consuming it,
mm-hmm.
you're going to be getting more of the omega-3s.
Yeah.
If you're taking the industrial food that's been hydrogenated
mm-hmm.
and processed and ultra-processed,
yeah.
and then put back together, that's where we run into problems.
Yes. Yeah.
That was not the way our body was designed to eat.
No. And we're seeing that because it's newer that this is happening.
The only people that benefit from this are the people that get the cheap raw ingredients and then sell the expensive, you can label them junk foods or unhealthy foods, whatever you want to call them, but they've been messed with by man.
Yeah, manipulated.
And man does that because of greed. Really, if you look at our food system as a farmer, if you eat local food, you don't have to change it to have an increased shelf life, do you?
No.
We quit shipping our milk. Our milk used to be shipped to Weston, Virginia to be processed.
Wow.
And they would ultra-pasteurize it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, why would they do that?
To increase the shelf life.
Increase the shelf life.
Yeah.
So by the time you get it in the store, it's already been messed with.
Yeah.
It's already quite old. With the new model that we have created at the farm, the milk that's in the tank this morning is being jugged right now.
Yeah.
And it will be in the consumer's refrigerator
by the end of the day.
By supper time.
Mm-hmm. Right.
It was in the cow this morning. Now that is a novel approach to food.
Oh, yeah.
To pick it and consume it the same day.
Right. With no or very, very, very little manipulation by man versus...
The only thing we did was cool it down to 38 degrees.
Right, exactly.
Other than that, it's just the way it came from the cow this morning.
And so it's going to operate in the body the way that it was meant to operate in the body.
And there are so many things that are critical in our body. All of these things, it's almost like gears meshing. Lactose intolerance, people that can't consume pasteurized milk.
Right.
Most of them can consume raw cow's milk.
Yeah.
Why? Because the bacteria, the good bacteria in that milk, when they get down to the intestine, they create lactase that digests the milk sugar.
Right.
And so it works beautifully. Mm-hmm. But you see, if you heat that milk and kill those bacteria, then it does not work.
Right.
So who created the problem? It's not the cow's fault.
No, exactly.
It's man's fault.
Well, and that's exactly what's happening. Well, not exactly in terms of the lactase in the stomach, but that's exactly what's happening with these seed oils, because what happens then, so this is the chemical makeup, right, with the hydrogen atoms and all of that. So what happens then when we consume that? And that is free radicals. So in the same way that unsaturated fats are more prone to oxidation due to missing hydrogen atoms, the same thing happens inside the body when we consume these oils, and this is called oxidative stress. So So oxidation in your body, the process of a molecule losing an electron and being left with an unpaired electron as a result. Unpaired electrons are never a good thing, as their one and only goal is to find a partner to pair up with again. Molecules with a missing electron are called free radicals. And I've heard this talked about in many different spaces in terms of like health and inflammation and all of that. Free radicals come up a lot. Molecules with a missing electron are called free radicals, and they will wreak havoc on your body by stealing electrons from other cells, leaving a lot of cellular damage in their wake. Seed oils are highly reactive and more prone to oxidation than other fats. So the more seed oils you consume, the more free radicals in your body, resulting in more cellular damage. So that's just it's literally just like the beginning of the science on this. But that's just a little bit of a peek into what's happening in your body when you consume these. And again, when you eat edamame or when you eat fresh corn on the cob, that's not what's happening in your body when you consume those things. It is the human manipulation of these products that are causing that to happen in your body when you consume them.
Right. Once you understand the science behind it, now the application gets very challenging.
Yeah.
Because you go in that store to do your shopping, and they're not going to say on there, don't eat this because of the free radicals.
Absolutely. They're going to go out of their way to do the opposite.
I was reading a bag of chips on the table last night, and it just said vegetable oil. And then it listed 8 vegetable oils, the seeds that it could have come from.
Yes.
Why do they do that? Because that's their choice, and they pick the cheapest one at the time, and that's what they utilize.
Yeah.
And when they're printing the package, they want to cover it all.
Yes.
So they just put vegetable oil. Now, it's been hydrogenated partially. They've messed with it in the lab, and they've created something that was not natural.
A freaking food product.
It does not work in your body.
No, it doesn't.
And it creates health outcomes. Back in the 1800s, they had disease issues that were like typhoid and, tuberculosis, major problems.
Yeah.
But it was basically due to sanitation and the lack of being able to fight those diseases.
Right.
We've won that battle.
Yes. Yes.
Now the battle we're facing, obesity, diabetes, heart disease, cancer. I mean, my goodness, young people.
Yes. I know.
Young people.
I know.
Having these issues. And it's escalating tremendously.
Yeah.
And it's very obvious this is not natural. This was not in the 1800s. No. They had a different problem. But we have a health crisis. And even worse, we have a farm crisis because we're losing our farmers, 4 farmers every day. But we have to learn how to apply this information in the store itself.
Yes.
As we're filling our cart, we need to put good food in there.
Yes.
It's like putting water in your gas tank. That car's not going anywhere.
Right.
You have to put the right fuel in your body to be healthy and to be able to thrive.
Well, and that's the perfect segue because this is my experience. I've had me talking about seed oils is like me talking to people about Jesus, right? Like it comes up all of the time. And I have conversations with everybody in my life. All of my friends and family have had the seed oil spiel at this point because I'm so passionate and I really want people to know about this. But the number one thing that nearly everybody has come back and said to me after I've started trying to educate them on seed oils, they say, oh, well, I only cook with olive oil, so I'm fine. I'm good. That's all I have in my kitchen is olive oil.
They don't know it's in the food they're eating.
It's in everything.
Yes. So if you get one thing out of this, there's something hidden in your food if it's processed.
Just about every processed food item that you can purchase at a grocery store or find in a restaurant has some sort of processed oil in it. Just about everything. Even some things may surprise you. Personally, in my own food journey that I've been on for the past 2 years or so, I started by going organic. And I felt so good about that. I started learning about pesticides and herbicides and how they were affecting my body. And I was getting so educated, and I went out and I had a whole grocery trip where I bought all organic stuff. And I was telling my husband, look, we're going to be healthy. I'm so excited. And then the Lord, by his mercy, brought me to seed oils about 3 months later. So I had been eating this organic diet for about 3 months when I discovered seed oils. And I remember when I very first heard about seed oils, I ran into the kitchen and I was pulling out all of this organic food that I bought, and I ended up giving almost all of it away.
It was in there.
Almost every single organic item that I purchased that I felt so good about, I had to give away. Because I was like, I can't eat this now. And it was actually, we'll talk about this in a second, but it propelled me down a path of cooking from scratch, which we'll talk about in a second. But it's just interesting to me how it's in everything. It's in everything. And it's estimated, I read an interesting fact online, that the average American eats 5 to 10 tablespoons of seed oil every single day.
Do you know?
I'll tell you, it's in everything.
Do you know why they put it in everything?
Because it's a preservative. It helps expand the shelf life of these
shelf life, and it's cheap.
And yes, of course, always the profit.
If you're marketing products,
right,
and you can source cheap ingredients to increase your shelf life, do you understand what I just said?
Right.
That is,
I mean, bingo.
Yeah.
Here we go. Yeah.
Yeah. So they have a motive, but it's not for our health.
No. I mean, these oils are even in baby formula. I mean, when I tell you, it's in everything. And it's not until you know, when we went over the science a little bit, it's if you need to know this so that you can have that conviction of, wait, this is in baby formula, to really understand what that means. It's in baby formula. It's just astounding to me. It's astounding. So we're sharing this on this podcast because real whole food that you produce and that I try very, very hard to source by a farmer on a farm has been crushed under the thumb of seed oil big business and blamed for rapid increases in diseases that were rare before these oils came on the scene. And you said something interesting that I wanted to point out. I'm glad we're coming back to it. We are very clean people now compared to the 1800s.
Yep.
And yet we still have all of this disease and illness, more so now than back in the 1800s.
It's very obvious to me that our food has been tampered with. You know, it's a universal problem.
It is.
We have a global situation here.
Yeah.
And these are major companies that are international.
Yeah.
And they're all doing this. And so it doesn't matter what store you shop in. It doesn't matter what brand you buy. This is, unless you buy directly from the farm,
right,
or at the farmer's market, and it's real food.
Right.
That right there will make your shopping much easier.
Well, families have been milking the cow and making cheese and making butter. They've been salt curing their own meats for centuries. Yeah. Centuries. And yet we have more obesity and heart disease now than ever before. And the seed oils have only been on the scene for roughly 100 years, somewhere in there.
All you have to do is, 70 years we've had declining milk consumption, fluid milk consumption. 70 years ago, mandatory pasteurization, okay? And it doesn't work. We just talked about lactose.
Right, yep. It's not helping people.
It takes us a while to see the outcomes.
Yes. Yes, it does. The
now,
trends.
Initially, pasteurized milk was rejected because it was the newbie and people didn't want it.
Yeah. But
marketing is marketing. And, if that's the only choice that you have when you go shopping, that's what you're going to consume.
Well, and again, the marketing. So let's take it back to when the seed oils were first coming on the scene. It was very difficult to get people on board with it. And at first, they were not becoming successful. And it wasn't until they started the heart disease propaganda and they very heavily marketed towards these wives and mothers. And they put this sense of like guilt and shame and responsibility on them. Like, you need to make sure your family is healthy and you need to protect the hearts of your family. And so it was that marketing that really got them to consume the seed oils in the first place. And that's still the marketing that they are pushing today, because if you go onto Google and you try to research any of the things, which, if we are able to, we can put links to some of these things. I've got a couple articles that I can provide as resources, but you have to dig, because when you Google "are seed oils bad?", the first 5 articles are going to be the American Heart Association, all of these big associations saying, no, they're great for you. They've been proven to reduce heart disease. No, they haven't. No, they haven't. And you turned me on to The Oiling of America by Sally Fallon. And I listened to it before filming this. And that's on YouTube, totally free. Anybody could watch it. It's a couple hours. Sally Fallon's fabulous. She does a great job breaking the information down to be very digestible. She gets much more into the science than we are in this podcast, but that's wonderful. Deep Nutrition by Dr. Catherine Shanahan is the book that changed my life in terms of seed oils. It's hefty, but if you are in your childbearing years, I highly recommend it, because she talks a lot about the effect of seed oils on our future generations and how it's actually changing the health of our children. And if I were to consume seed oils while pregnant, how that would affect my baby for the rest of its life.
You know, Francis Pottinger was an old guy, and he did research with cats. And he had 3 different groups. And the group that he fed pasteurized milk and cooked meat did not reproduce after 3 generations.
Wow.
The study ended right there because he didn't have any more cats. They couldn't reproduce. And, you know, this was many, many years ago. This is back in Weston A. Price. Weston A. Price is another one.
Yes, fabulous.
Who went and researched the world. And what he found was people that ate real food, it wasn't linked to a specific food item.
No.
It varied where they were growing up. But if it was pure food and unprocessed food, they had perfect teeth, perfect health, none of these diseases. None of these diseases. No. So we know that it's linked to the diet.
I'm glad you brought up Weston A. Price. He's a wonderful, if you are on Facebook, you can find your local chapter on Facebook and follow that group. There's excellent information with Weston A. Price. The last resource that I want to mention in this podcast is the Nourishing Traditions. Are you familiar with that?
I have copies. I've been getting copies for 20 years.
Okay, wonderful. Sally Fallon and Mary Enig, and by the way, in Sally Fallon's Oiling of America YouTube video that she does, it's actually Mary Enig's research that she's referencing pretty consistently through that. They have a book, Nourishing Traditions. The whole first bit of it, the first several chapters, are a summary of everything that we're discussing in terms of the history, how seed oils came to be, what's happening in your body when you consume them. And then the rest of it is a cookbook teaching you how to nourishing traditions, the traditional way of preparing and eating food, which is how I want to close this podcast episode, is by saying, okay, great. So you've scared me now. Seed oils are bad. We're not supposed to eat them. Okay, but I still have to feed my family. What do I do now? You know? So we've mentioned at the beginning that olive oil, coconut oil, and avocado oil are good substitutes, and they're good substitutes. I still don't want to say that they're the end-all be-all, though, especially like olive oil. Its smoke point is not as high as the others, and it can still oxidize. It has a much higher omega-3 ratio, so it kind of helps a little bit with that imbalance, but it's still not great. You really want to stick to your animal products. Butter, lard, tallow, ghee. These are the cooking oils. These are pretty much exclusively when I use bacon grease. These are exclusively the fats that I use in my kitchen. And you have to be a little bit of a rebel, because if you tell that to your doctor, they're going to throw a fit.
We need to understand, and this is not a bash on doctors, but we need to understand that the education and the training is fueled by misinformation and by money. I was listening to Alice Waters talk on a Real Organic Project yesterday. She's 80 years old. She talked about a study that a certain doctor did for one of these big companies, and the results were very negative. And the company gave him a grant to do this research, and it was a bad outcome. And they didn't want him to publish this study.
Right.
But he was honest, and he knew that the people needed to see the results. And he went ahead and published it. And they defamed him. They abused him. They tried everything. He brought a lawsuit against him, and they had to pay.
Wow.
But you need to understand, when you're in marketing and you're huge, you will do a lot of things to cover things up.
Yes.
And it gets ugly.
Insofar as changing the way that you're even quantifying these results in the first place. I was shocked to hear in the Oiling of America video that they were doing all of these studies and they were getting these bad results, so they just changed the way they delivered the information.
I was part of a organic weed grant study.
Interesting.
I answered the questions on my front porch. Personal friend of mine was doing the questioning. And he's a PhD. You know, he travels the world. And he came back from Europe years later. And we were just going for a walk. And he said to me, "Oh, by the way, all your answers were thrown out."
Why? They didn't fit his narrative?
Well, his first question is, what is the most challenging weed on your farm? And I said, well, what is a weed? No, you're laughing. A weed is a plant out of place.
Yes.
It could be last year's corn plant in this year's soybean field.
A weed to you may not be a weed to me.
So I bought some land that had bed straw on it, which is considered a weed.
Yeah.
It's a prolific cedar, but I cut the hay 3 times a year and make baleage out of it.
Yeah.
And the grass whisperer, who is in Madison County, Troy Bishop, he took some of that bed straw, which is considered a weed, and he sent it to the forage lab for analysis, and it's higher protein than alfalfa.
Not a weed anymore.
Now, my cows were eating it.
Yeah.
I was cutting it frequently so it didn't have time to go to seed. So is that a negative? Is that a weed for me?
Right.
If it's feeding my cows super high protein feed, and it's not altering my crop rotation or anything, my management overcame any negatives that it could have given me. But the point I wanted to make was he threw my answers out. Now, if it was an accurate survey, you should include all responses and present it as such so that people could draw their conclusions. Why would somebody be paid to do a survey and then throw out your answers?
Exactly. Well, and that's exactly the sort of thing that's done with so many of these studies, these seed oil studies.
Yeah.
They throw them out, or they purposely only ask, certain demographics or what have you.
Well, it's paid for science.
Exactly. And there's really nobody monitoring it, or the people who are monitoring it are paid by the same people who are conducting it in the first place.
Now, what we have here is free science.
Yeah, it's free, all right.
What we're doing is we're experiencing life.
Yes.
And then we're sharing what we're learning, what we see happening.
Exactly. Which is why we want to make sure that we provide the resources, because we encourage everybody to go do their own research. We just wanted to give a little bit of a baseline on this topic. Again, very passionate about the consumption of seed oils. And so please look into the other resources that we've provided. Do your own research. Be careful with Google, because you can't always trust what you read on the internet. And again, same thing. They really purposely push the true facts as far down the search list as they possibly can. It takes a while to dig through Google. So get you some good books and do some reading. And then the next time that you go to the grocery store, I really encourage you to read the food labels. And honestly, I hope this is okay to say on this podcast. Let the spirit guide you. See how you feel. Read those labels, see what they say, and then how does that make you feel on the inside,
If you're buying a food item that has a nutrition label on it, I was just looking at a cereal box the other day, and it had listed all the vitamins in the cereal box.
Right.
And then it had the ingredients. And you know where all the vitamins were coming from?
It's synthetic sources.
They were man-made so that they could put it on the nutrition label so that mom would buy this for her family.
Right. Oh, that's a whole other topic. There are so many things artificially put in our food. It's wild. The dyes, the synthetic vitamins and minerals, the oils, the corn syrups and sweeteners. It's so much of it is synthetic.
And if you really want to be healthy, avoid any food stuff that has nutrition labels on it and buy it from someone who you know grew it.
Yes.
Real food. And then enjoy preparing it. I just had a delicious carrot cake yesterday.
I made roasted garlic sage focaccia yesterday, and it was amazing.
We have 7 sons, and my wife cooked a sirloin steak one night. And one of the boys has a group of men that get together. They call it a game night, and they eat a meal.
Yeah.
And he was so enjoying this sirloin steak, just grass-fed organic beef. And he asked my wife, Dottie, how she prepared it. She used butter, and she used garlic.
Yep. And I'm sure it was exquisite.
And he cooked it for his group. You're safe if you're using butter and garlic.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe we should have an episode sometime talking about next steps. Like, you've learned about the milk and the soil and the way that the animals are treated and all the nasty stuff that's in the foods. Maybe we should have an episode where we talk about kind of where we go from there when we have that information. I think that would be good.
Actually, I've got that planned for you for our next topic.
Oh, really? Okay.
Well, the thing that I'm heading towards, you see, I'm a 70-year-old retired dairy farmer. We have very few farmers left. Mm-hmm. And even this farm, even my son is taking over the farm.
Yeah.
We are direct marketing everything to the consumer.
Correct, yeah.
I shared on this, our milk is fresh this morning. Yeah. It's in your fridge tonight.
Right.
So we have created a new direct retail link with the consumer. Mm-hmm. That's the safest place you're going to get.
Yeah, that's true.
You can come and ask me anything about how we produce the food, and we produce a lot of different varieties of foods on the farm.
Come see the cows.
Actually, you know what came this morning? Baby chicks.
You've got baby chicks.
Meat birds arrived this morning. Megan's got them.
I Megan must be excited.
Yeah. And this started during the pandemic. Mm-hmm. We sell certified organic grass-fed beef and a lot of other meats. And when the stores were empty, we were swamped. I mean, cars lined the road.
Yeah. During COVID?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't have a huge farm.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And I knew, Megan knew,
with the supply.
It takes 2 years to raise a bull calf to butcher for meat.
Right.
So she started raising meat birds right then.
Yeah.
That was our first batch. Because in 8 weeks, you've got protein.
You've got meat, yeah. Wow.
And if you raise them in a chicken tractor out on the grass, now you're improving your soil. Yeah. Now you're getting bugs and worms into the birds. Now you're improving your chicken.
Yeah.
And you know what? It tastes like chicken. It's amazing.
It is amazing.
The flavor. Actually, Alice Waters was talking about taste yesterday in that podcast.
The taste is amazing.
Well, she went to France. She went to France in 1964, and she learned, she had taste buds, and she discovered food.
I'm sure the food in France is amazing.
Changed her life. She said people were standing outside in front of the bakery waiting 20 minutes for their bread, and it was still warm.
Another great resource for people that goes along with what you're saying, The Omnivore's Dilemma by Michael Pollan.
Yep.
That's a picture of that as well. He purchases a calf and follows its life all through the industrial food chain.
Yep.
And gets to the end, and he compares it to eating,
While we're talking about food, if we want to address the climate issue,
oh boy,
you know what the best way to do?
How?
Is to return to nature. Put the cows back out grazing the grass. Put the chickens back out in the yard. Do it the way, just mimic nature.
Yeah, yeah.
Let the grass be green and use the animals to harvest the grass.
Right.
You're managing the grass, you're managing the animals.
Yeah.
Really, man's role on this planet is to direct the dance.
Yes.
Moving the animals so that they can scratch the back of the earth and make it do what it's going to do.
I don't know why, as we're talking, I'm just getting all of these resources coming to mind. The Contrary Farmer by Gene Logsdon is a beautiful picture of that, exactly what you're saying, how to work with the original picture, the original canvas, and manage it, steward it the way that we were always meant to, and not this monocropping, feedlot nonsense that we're doing.
Alan Savory said, he was interviewed by the Real Organic Project, and he's in his 80s, almost 90. The problem is all management.
Yeah, it is.
The problems that we have are a direct result of mismanagement.
Us humans, we just come in and muddle it all.
Well, we think we can take a shortcut and find a better way.
Yeah.
And then in the long run, we see the outcome.
Yes.
It's failure.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks for sticking with us on this conversation on seed oils. Like I said, I know that there was a little bit of science in there, which is not always the most fun to listen to, but I really, really feel that it's important to understand what's happening in your body. And guys, we only brushed the surface in talking about that. I really recommend Deep Nutrition by Dr. Catherine Shanahan. If you want to dive really deep, I mean, she gets down to the molecular level, what's happening in your body when you eat these oils. And once you know, you can't unknow. Once you know what's happening, fried food, actually, I think this is important to add. When you go to a restaurant, we talked a lot about grocery stores. We didn't really talk about restaurants. When you go to a restaurant and you order French fries, they've been using that same oil to fry those French fries for God knows how days, sometimes weeks. I spent a decade in the food service industry. a long time before they're mandated to change that oil. That oil went rancid the first time they used it. When they turned the heat on that bad boy the first time, it was already rancid. You're eating French fries that are just drenched in an oil that does just, once you know what it does. So I've had people ask me, because my husband and I have been trying to conceive. So I've cut seed oils out completely. Actually, the only source of seed oil that I still consume is my Burt's Bees chapstick, because I'm addicted to it. I haven't figured out how to get off of it. But I haven't had a mozzarella stick or a French fry or an onion ring in almost a year and a half now. People ask me, do you miss it? I had my niece, she was like, you don't miss mozzarella sticks? You used to love them. I really don't, because you could not pay me to put it in my mouth. Like, now that I know what's happening in my body after I eat it, I gag at the idea of it. I can't.
Why do you think people ask you, don't you miss it? There is a flavor that convinces our mind that you can't eat just one.
Yes.
That you have to have more.
Yeah.
And you know what? This is a purposeful marketing tool.
Yeah, to get you hooked.
To get you to continue to buy that product.
Yes.
You need to understand what's happening in your body. Sugar.
Yeah. We didn't even talk about
salt,
sugar in this, but
I could give you a lot of illustrations, but I don't want to go there. But you need to understand marketing is huge.
It really is.
There's a book I read years ago. Barbara Stitt wrote it, Food and Behavior. Yeah. And she worked with people that were before the justice system.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, changing their diet. Mm-hmm. She checked their blood sugar levels and then changed their diet and got some real healthy food into them. And they'd fall in love all over again. I mean, the guy was trying to kill his wife, and she fed him good food, and the problem was solved.
That's a whole other podcast episode. I could talk about that for hours, the way that food affects our behavior.
Yep.
And how there are such vivid pictures of that all over the place. I mean, if you hone in on any one area, you can see, or even just a family, you can see how the food dyes are affecting the behavior of the children. It's crazy.
She and her husband, actually her husband worked for a major food company. He was a nutritionist, and he got fired.
Because
he wanted to make really good, healthy food to feed the third world nations.
Well, that wouldn't make that company enough money.
Okay. So you know what they did? Together, they took over a cafeteria in a public school, and they changed the diet. Alice Waters is doing this. She's got 6,200 schools in the nation.
Yeah.
Local organic food, real food in the kids.
Prepared properly.
It changed the learning. It changed no more vandalism. Changed the behavior.
Oh, yeah.
The kids are in tune and ready to go.
Well, it changed my behavior. I was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. I was on medication when I decided to cut seed oils out of my life. I had chronic migraines. And because of that, I mean, our marriage was struggling. I mean, I was struggling. I was not able to show up 100% in any area of my life because of these things. And as soon as I cut out seed oil, I think I've had one migraine in the past year.
We were in Denver, Colorado, writing a book on raw milk production for the Weston A. Price Foundation.
Yeah.
Dr. Ted Beals and his wife, Peggy, and we were going out to dinner, and they wanted to know if there was MSG in the food because it gave them headaches.
Yeah.
Because they didn't consume that.
Yeah.
And they chose their food item based on what was in the food.
Because it would give them headaches. It's so true. It's so true.
Well, it affects our life.
Yeah. Okay, well, this has been an Italian goodbye. We've teased a goodbye like 3 times. Okay, we're really going this time. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Sustainable Farm Podcast, and join us for the next one, because I think it's going to be a really interesting one.
What's an Italian goodbye?